Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our very first DreamPod community call Experiment, where Matthew, our Green Knight, and I will be offering a longer transmission or kind of a co-riff on this month's theme, one that we imagine and really hope will be able to happily stand alone. And we're doing this for a few reasons. One is so that we can take a little more time than we usually have during DreamPod calls to explore a subject. And another is so that when we do come together for our monthly call, more of us will have had a chance to contemplate the theme. And then finally, for those of you DreamArc journeyers who really love having lots of spaciousness to share about your experiences and insights with your fellow journeyers and often feel like you could use more time actually than you get, then sharing the transmission this way is going to allow us to extend the time that you get in your breakthrough groups during the actual DreamPod call. So we really hope that this experiment leaves even more of you feeling fulfilled, both those of you who long for more content and for those of you who just wish for longer time to hang out with each other and your fellow journeyers. So as you know, the DreamArc is all about play and experimentation for the sake of ever-expanding delight, and we are delighted to be doing this experiment together with you. All right, so while I'm talking, we welcome any of you to share in the comments section below where you are in the world and how you've been or how long you've been on the DreamArc journey. And to any of you who are newbies or any of you who've been here for what feels like forever, we welcome you. And do let us know, like in the comments below, if this is your first DreamPod call or transmission call, or whatever you want to call it, ever. Great. And, just thank you. Thank you for sharing and thank you for showing up. And then as I usually do, before Matthew brings us together in a beautiful way, as he usually does, I just want to start by giving you a quick overview of how we're going to be spending our time together, and then we're just going to dive right in. So Matthew's going to help us commune and get nice and warmed up to our theme of dreaming, fantasy, and the teenage mind. And then we're both going to take turns riffing on that theme in our own way, inviting you to do your own percolating as we go. And then, of course, we'll call upon the DreamArc Oracle to invite in an animal whose wisdom will be here to guide each of us individually and also whose message will enhance this month's theme, which is going to bring even more juiciness and depth to our upcoming DreamPod call, where we're going to actually get the chance to share and explore and co-contemplate with our fellow journeyers in small groups as well as in the larger group. And then once we've called in this month's creature, bird, or mammal, we'll share just a few words about this upcoming call and how it might be just a little bit different than the ones in the past. And we'll make sure you all have some rich questions for you and your inner teenager to take with you into your nighttime dreams and daydreams. And then we'll close with something really inspirational and relevant. So stick around so you don't miss it. And that's it from me. Matthew, you want to just gather us together energetically? That would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Rosie. All right, everybody, you ready to open up that teenage mind of yours? So we like to begin all of our calls with a little bit of an attunement. So I just invite you to close your eyes. This is a very short attunement, just to enter into the space of receptivity and listening that is needed for as we embark on this journey together today. So I invite you to close your eyes and just bring your attention to your breath, to the rhythms of your body, noticing anything that's going on inside of you at this time. Perhaps you're juggling a few more things than usual as you watch this, and you might just be able to bring your attention inwards and allow some of those distractions of the day to just melt away for this short time that we're here together. And as you breathe, just feeling yourself becoming more relaxed, more centered, more open. As we work with this today, we're opening up to the magic of the teenage mind. We're opening up to the realms of dreaming and of fantasy. This calls for an element of receptivity and openness, a willingness to trust in the unraveling in the moment, to trust in the nature of our dreams, to trust in the nature of our expansive minds, and to recognize any of the limitations that we might still be carrying around with us that prevent us from heeding the guidance of our dreams, or that prevent us from embracing our full creative potential. And so this is a space and a time for opening up, of letting go of the knowing mind that has stories about your creativity or your imagination, and allowing this expansiveness and this boundlessness. At night we sleep and we dream, and sometimes we remember, and sometimes we forget, and all of this is okay. And yet here in this moment, we're in another state of dreaming, different frequency perhaps. But as we open our minds, as we open our hearts, we can receive whatever inspiration is ready to pour through in this time together. And you might see, be present to your own self as a teenager. How are you in relationship to yourself? Is this a familiar face that you're looking upon? How does this face treat you? Is it open and receptive? Is it shy? Perhaps it feels like there's some kind of walls there between you and this older version of yourself. So this is a time for exploration, a time for curiosity, and a time for building relationship with this part of ourselves. And so when you feel ready, when you feel a little bit more relaxed and calm, a little bit more open, your shoulders relaxed, your belly relaxed, then you can join us in this wee journey together today with your eyes open. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Matthew. It was very beautiful. And, I just want to say that one of my favorite parts of the calls with you is just getting to show up with no idea of what you're going to share or how you're going to bring us together, and just getting to really just sit back and receive it, to receive your energy and your wisdom. And thank you so much. Your energy, I already feel a little less hyper than I did at the beginning of this whole recording. So I will take the baton now and bring us even deeper into the theme of the month, dreams, fantasy, and the teenage brain. And, I'll just start by acknowledging something relevant about each of you who's here with us. And Matthew's already touched on that. And that is, well, one is that you might be a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a sibling, a cousin, a grandparent of a teenager. And if that's true for you, if you have a teenager in your life, feel free to write down in the comments something about that relationship that you have with the teenager. And even if none of that is true, if there isn't any teenager in your life, it doesn't really matter unless you are a teenager right now. And if you are, then that would be absolutely awesome, and welcome to this experience. But all of you have been a teenager once, which means that you still have a teenager living inside of you with its hopes and its dreams and its humiliations and its traumas, its thrills, its excitements, its shames, its insecurities, its like most proud achievements and its most embarrassing moments, as well as its huge capacity for engaging in the multidimensional and flexible realms of imagination and fantasy. So we really want to stress that you've got that capacity in you. Whether or not you've managed to celebrate it or to repress it, whether it's been conditioned as far away from your current identity, worldview, and style of expression as humanly possible. And in a way, that's what the whole dream arc is about, right? To remind and connect us with that part of us, to awaken all of the bridges between our inner lives and our outer lives, between our waking lives and our sleeping lives, our imaginal lives and our practical lives, our spiritual lives, our embodied lives, and to help us flow with ease back and forth and through all of the realms, right? All the unconscious, the conscious, the superconscious, or the more shamanically inspired prism of the lower, middle, and upper worlds, which is a huge part of the dream arc. So when we dive deep into dream arc waters, we really get to experience how our dreams can help us digest and heal and transmute that which comes towards us from the outside world, as well as help us like alchemize and manifest the visions that kind of come down from the heavens into and through us and then out into the world. So while we're together, we're going to be inviting back into our oh so adult awareness this raw, this awkward, boundless, and unbridled beauty of our inner teenager, as well as exploring our current relationship to both the like very adventurous and the wounded places within us that we still carry from that time, and how that relationship, as well as our potential to heal it, might be revealed and supported through our explorations of waking and sleeping dreams, as well as through our fantasies. And I'd also like to see if I can weave in a couple of theories into the mix that I've been thinking about lately, germ theory and terrain theory, and hopefully that'll make more sense in a bit to myself as well. It's a little inspiration that I had. Okay, there's one more thing that I wanted to acknowledge before I dive in, that some of you might be engaging in a wonderful Gene Keys program at this time called the Venus sequence. Now, if that's you, you might find this particular transmission in the dream arc particularly exciting and relevant, as it will likely bring an additional layer of meaning and depth to your Venusian journey, where you're being invited right now to use your mind to better understand and appreciate the way your unique mind works. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, no worries. What we're exploring together is relevant to everybody. So you don't have to know anything about the Venus sequence, although it might pique your interest. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. And one thing that Richard talks about, as well as a lot of thinkers in the field of psychology, is just how much our experience as teenagers, whether we're loved and nurtured or criticized and abused or something in between, impacts the way we think and the mental attitudes that we carry for the rest of our lives. And of course, our thoughts, beliefs, our mental attitudes have an enormous impact on just about everything that we do, right? They ultimately determine how and who we become, right? They impact our ability to hold, feel, and express our feelings, to open ourselves up to and feel worthy of intimacy. They impact our ability to imagine, to dream, to collaborate with others, and ultimately to freely create and manifest our deepest dreams for ourselves in the world, whether we're sleeping or awake. And most of the time, we're not even really aware of how our minds work or how they've been impacted by our early experiences, right? Our minds just kind of operate how they always have, or at least how they were unconsciously conditioned or trained to operate. So right now, I'd like to just start inviting you to start thinking about yourself. And I'm talking to you too, Matthew, and how it was for you as you moved from your childhood into your teenage, maybe even including your preteen or tweenage years. And I want to include tweenage years, even though it's actually a relatively recent developmental concept for us humans, because the level of exposure that children and preteens have had to adult material, like especially in places in the world that have been heavily influenced by Western culture, has just increased so much over the past couple of decades. And just a side note, as a mom, like I saw just how early my daughter's mind, both waking and dreaming, was impacted and influenced by concepts, cultural trends, world happenings that were likely way too sophisticated or disturbing or anxiety provoking for her young mind and her emotional body, more than what she should ever have to handle. And now she's 21, so she was actually one of the last to make it through childhood without a smartphone. And I can't even imagine what young ones now are being exposed to from this constant, ever speeding up barrage of never good enough messaging or highly sexualized and violent content, through games or TV shows, YouTube, TikTok, Insta, whatever, to confusing and horrifying and extinction level news and events and images and footage, to a steady stream of both local and global bad news everywhere, to cyberbullying. That's something my daughter didn't have to deal with, right? So it goes on and on. And somehow their young minds are expected to process it all, right? And the same goes for the young teenage mind that's still living inside of you, right? So it's no wonder that so many of our youth and the young parts of all of us can feel traumatized, disempowered, overwhelmed, and out of control so much of the time. And why there's such a temptation to use fantasy as a form of escaping the real world that we live in, as opposed to using it as the way to create the new world that we long to live in, right? Like a new reality here on Earth. So, what I'm talking about here is how our inner worlds are deeply influenced by external factors in our outside world. If someone tells you that you're worthless enough times, you're going to start to believe that you're worthless. If you're exposed to the glorification of anorectic bodies enough times, you're going to start to believe that if you don't weigh under 100 pounds, you will not be loved and respected or desired. If you're shown how people are continually cheating and hurting and manipulating and killing each other enough times, you're going to start believing that humans, that the world, that life itself is not safe or are not safe. That life can't be trusted, that no one can be trusted, that your only options are to fight, flee, or freeze. And what Matthew and I would love for you to explore in the coming days and weeks, precisely those external factors that your teenage brain was exposed to and particularly influenced by when you were younger. Who were the people who played a central role in nurturing and encouraging you at that time of your life? And who played a central role in judging or shaming you or trying to mold you and turn you into something other than what you were? So how were you supported and how were you inhibited? And I'm going to share or offer some more questions or prompts for your contemplation. And there might be maybe just one or two of those questions that really ignite something inside of you. So just honor that. Let the rest just kind of wash through you or over you if they don't feel relevant. And feel free to jot down a few notes for yourself, or if you're inspired, you might want to share some of what's arising, just like a phrase or something, in the comments below. Knowing that this is a deep and evolving contemplation, likely one that many of you have actually already begun in your life. You probably wouldn't be involved in the DreamArc if you haven't been quite the contemplator in your own right. So, what did you learn when you were a youth about dreaming? About your intuition, about using your imagination, about being creative. Like, were you encouraged to enjoy science fiction and fantasy, to play Dungeons and Dragons, to dress up, to play with stuffed animals and dolls, and disappear into myths and legends, and to play out your favorite archetypes and characters and fairies with your friends or on your own? Or did you learn pretty early on that all of that stuff was childish or stupid or shameful or not cool? One thing we'd really love for you to explore, again, this is also for you, Matthew, is whether you can remember either like a moment or a specific period of time in your teenage or teenage years when your capacity to play free of self-consciousness, like your ability to dream and take creative risks and feel and express your innocence, to dance and twirl around and be silly and enjoy your body, like a time when that gradually faded away or maybe even ended abruptly. And if you can remember a time when your playful inner child was shut down or got lost or was buried underground, how old were you? Like, was there an external factor you can pinpoint or a person that initiated the shutting down? Maybe someone said something critical to you, or you were negatively compared to someone else. That happens a lot. That comparative mind really gets activated when we're teenagers. And maybe you were told that if you weren't as good or talented or skilled as someone else, your sister, your brother, that you should give up on something that you actually really enjoy doing, right? And then to put your energy towards something else, something safer, something more respectable, something more likely to be approved of. Can you remember learning that to be accepted and valued, you had to embrace the rational, the practical, the skeptical, even the sarcastic? Did you receive the message that your safety depended on your being compliant, right? That if you knew what was good for you, you'd better follow the rules and in the footsteps of certain authority figures or certain cultural role models? Were you taught that you, your nature, your body's needs and desires were essentially sinful? Either because you were born that way or you gave in to evil temptations that got stronger as you entered into your adolescence. Maybe during your teenage years, you learned that if you were going to survive or be respected or keep some semblance of like sovereignty or get any attention at all, even if it was negative attention, that you better resist external pressures by being like strong and opinionated and oppositional in relation to authorities and social trends. So just let these questions percolate. And at some point during your contemplation, see if you can identify like one or two of the most diminishing messages that you received and swallowed whole during your teenage years in relation to your playfulness, your intuition, your creativity. And ask yourself, does that message still live inside of you as a belief? Or maybe it's showing up as a behavior or a set of behaviors, as an avoidance of risk-taking, a fear of failure, maybe a tendency to hide or to procrastinate or be really, really hard on yourself. Does it live in you as a bodily shame, like an agonizing, self-doubting, overly rational approach to decision-making, where every choice you make has to be like backed up by facts and evidence and authoritative approval? How does that repressed teenager still show up in your life? And if you were like me and many people, you probably received all kinds of messages and modeling from different people, like a real hodgepodge. So it's also important, just as important, maybe even more important, to look for the positive role models. Like to remember and honor those people who nurtured your creativity, who believed in you, who helped you stay in touch with your capacity to dream as you traverse those teenage years. Like who, for example, encouraged you to trust your gut or to look for encouraging signs in your dreams and in the natural world around you, or to keep alive the imaginative, multidimensional, and intuitive aspects of your child mind? Was there anyone in your personal life? Could be role models in the larger culture, could be a hero in a movie or a character in a favorite book who invited you to just play with possibilities, right? To indulge in daydreaming, to pay attention to your nighttime dreams. Did you have anyone that put any focus on that? Was there anyone who actually encouraged you to make lots of mistakes, right? To embrace failure and painful experiences as essential learning opportunities? Was there someone who taught or modeled for you that you were deeply connected to the world around you, that you were a part of nature, that nature was a part of you, that nature and the world, and at least the majority of beings in it, were essentially, most of the time, safe and trustworthy and friendly? Can you think of someone who encouraged you to enjoy a good mystery, to explore your spirituality by transcending rigid belief systems and predetermined protocols and dogmas, and by following your intuitive heart? So again, you get the idea, and feel free to just write down any names that come up for you, whether it's a parent, a friend, a cousin, a teacher, a character, a TV character, whatever. And if you can, either now or later, privately or in the comments, just sum up the essence of what they taught you about life, just in a phrase or two, in a message. So all I've been talking about here has to do with what came into our inner life, what came into your inner life from the outside. And this is where German terrain theories come in, so bear with me here. if we think of germ theory, we can think of all that negative conditioning and the criticism and the shame and the discouragement. We can think of all of that as like invisible pathogens or germs that have come in or invaded our teenage mental body and created a state of dis-ease inside of us. So germ theory tells us that our big job, right, if we want to be healthy, and in this case, if we want to be mentally healthy, is to fend off and get rid of these germs, these false beliefs and negative messaging. And all of that stuff is seen as bad and dangerous and as memories and traumas that are to be removed. Kind of like how before many of us have met the DreamArc or the Gene Keys or Jungian philosophy, we learn to see and approach the shadow territory, right? The shadows in our life as something to be rejected as opposed to leaned into with curiosity, with the spirit of discovery and compassionate generosity towards those tender places inside of us. And ultimately, we're taught to embrace in the Gene Keys world or in the DreamArc world these sacred wounds as those which can open us up to hidden treasures. So, as you look back at some of the more painful childhood memories, we really want to encourage you to see these as portals or gifts or portals to gifts, right? Gifts that for some reason at this very moment of your life, you're being asked to shine a light on and call forward. So you could also say from a germ theory perspective that all of the encouragement, the nurturing, the positive, the modeling, the messaging that you received during that time in your life was a form of medicine, like a curative force, a way of fighting off or counterbalancing all of that bad stuff, which makes perfect sense. And depending on how early and how much support you received throughout your childhood, we could also look at all that good stuff from the prism of the terrain theory, which essentially says that if your body is strong and healthy, if your immune system is working well, then you can be exposed to all kinds of germs and negative messaging, right? Either without getting sick or getting sick in a way that ends up building up your immune system and making you even stronger, more resilient. So, in other words, just as we're all living in an absolutely crazy world right now, where we're all exposed to just like limitless amounts of fear inducing and potentially damaging stuff, your ability to create an inner environment that's healthy, like your ability to cultivate a resilient immune system, can make a huge difference in how you and your inner teenage mind is impacted by what's actually happening around you. And I'd also say that the more you can care for and nourish your inner terrain in the now, the more you can also bring healing to your earlier experiences and your younger selves and even to your ancestors. And I'm sure many of you already do this kind of deep shamanic healing work. So in a way, you could say the whole of the DreamArc is designed to foster this healthy, adaptive, and flexible inner environment, this terrain. And it's a profound training, right? It's designed to help us build up our imaginal, intuitive, resilient, and creative immune system or our internal biome so that we can move through an increasingly crazy, disruptive, and changing world where so much of the old, so much of what we used to turn to for security and a sense of like what's real or true, with a sense of being simultaneously like liberated and protected so that we can receive that which is most healthy and beneficial for us from that outer world. And then, like the camel, one of the three portal creatures, cultivate that resilience, that stamina, that buoyancy that we need to transform our most painful moments or challenging life experiences or unhealthy exposures into something beautiful and meaningful. So now, as I was contemplating what I would talk about today, I did a little research into the adolescent brain and learned just how essential sound sleep, including REM sleep and dreaming, is to healthy brain growth, as well as good nutrition, stress management, and physical movement. And this, of course, isn't just true for the literal teenager, but for the teenager inside of you. So more questions for you to jot down mentally in your journal or in the comments. How are you doing at taking care of yourself? How are you tending to that inner garden, to your body? Are you getting enough rest? Are you prioritizing your dream time, your daydreaming, your spacing out time? Do you ever like say no and set a boundary to an invitation because you just want time to do nothing? That's something I'm working on right now. Your playtime, your art time, your music time, your altar time, your nature time. Are you doing like weird and gorgeous things like singing to the river and hugging trees and feeding birds and smelling the flowers, right? Are you eating foods that both feel and are nourishing to you? Are you paying attention to everything that you're taking in and digesting on a daily basis? And I'm not just talking about food and drink, but images and sounds and messages and news. Are you making sure that you're taking in more trust building messages than the scary stuff? Are you practicing forgiveness? Are you cultivating gratitude? What is the current state of your inner terrain? Right? Your psychic biome, and how can you be even more loving towards it? So these are the questions for you also to contemplate this month. And I believe I've talked enough for now. So Matthew, would you like to take it from here? And I would be so curious to hear if anything came up for you in response.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rosie. Absolutely. Even, as I came here and prepared to talk about certain things after you've run these questions by me already, there is new things popping up. And I think that's just such an appreciation I have for these kinds of questions that you're asking because they do probe and I love that we're giving people time to actually watch this, digest it, as part of their, terrain and to take that into their lives before coming and joining us in the DreamPod calls. So, because you posed these questions to me a little while ago and they cracked open stuff. And I've worked with this material, with the Venus sequence of the gene keys for many years now. And I'm just feeling there's other layers that are kind of bubbling up. And this is this work that we do. It's like peeling back the layers of the onion. And I'm not seeing it as like, oh man, I'm still unhealed. I've still got to do more. It's like there's more juice in this that's coming to the surface that's here to nourish me. And so your questions really are very leading in that way, in such a positive way. And yeah, I can definitely reflect as I'm sharing some of what I'm sharing because, I think of how these teenage years and so often I used to work with teenagers both in fitness training and in public speaking that I would do. And the common thing that I would hear with the parents was like handing them over to me and saying, my teenager's lost. You gotta help him out. And I just think of all those teenagers that received this message as they're trying to come to understand themselves. And oftentimes it was, they were never lost. We never are lost. This is something that our mind can tell us. We're just on such individual journeys. Not everybody understands that. And so the environment around us and being able to reparent that teenage self, and if you're a teenager, to be the parent to yourself, to that this teenager that you are now, so that we can recognize that, yeah, it's like it's actually a time that even if it appears that we are lost, it's so that we can find our own true path, right? And so, like you were saying, Rosie, it's like, what is the gift in being lost? What is the gift of the lost teenager? And it's that, when we can find our own way. And as I was sitting here reflecting on what you were sharing too, it's like I was going right on through time and back to my, you know, preteen and tween ages, as you're calling them. And I thought to my relationship, especially to creativity and art and imagination and dreaming. And I had two grandmothers, most of us did, but I had two grandmothers who were art teachers, both sides of the family. My mom's dad, my mom's mom, and my dad's mom, both were art teachers. And so I would go and visit them, and that would be a time when art was encouraged. And believe it or not, it was the precursor to the DreamArc because the thing that I fell in love with painting was birds, believe it or not. And that was what both my grandparents would support me with this. My grandmothers would support me with this. And so this was a really like powerful time. And then, in about the age of 13 or 14, I was involved in an accident and I ended up being in hospital for 6 weeks. And they were putting all kinds of drugs into me, and I'm alive today because of it. And at the same time, I didn't understand the nature of trauma at that time. And even though I had such a good home and great family, and I couldn't understand in the years afterwards why I felt so sad a lot of the time, and why I felt so much shame about myself, and my self-image was poor and that kind of thing. And it was also during that time when I would have, during the time in the hospital, that I would end up having a lot of hallucinations. And the doctor was talking to my parents one day, and it's like, yeah, he's doing well. Physically, he's recovering, but he's mad as a hatter. And some of those dreams actually haunted me for a long time afterwards. And they weren't pleasant dreams. They would be what we would call nightmares. They were scary to 14-year-old Matthew. And so I look at my relationship with dreaming in that year and moving on beyond that. And just I was raised in an industrial town in England. I know I don't have an English accent anymore, but that's one of the things that's really interesting to reflect on is teenage Matthew spoke differently. Teenage Matthew had people around him. He was in a very different environment, and the environment just plays such a huge part in it. And I was in an industrial, it was known as an industrial garden town, which meant we had little parks here and there for me to connect to nature. But it meant that the skies were full of factory smoke. And we were not a community that really encouraged the dreaming. There was this sense of, you're probably going to end up working in the factories, that kind of thing. But my parents did want me to aim for more for myself, but they really moved me towards the academic world. And so something very interesting for me to note. I have a cousin who's about my age, and both of us have shared our similar experiences in this, but we come from a very artistic family. We've got cousins, brothers, sisters, now nieces and nephews that are very, very artistic. And we were both moved in a different direction, and both of us being the eldest. And it was this yeah, I gradually began to notice that the dreaming mind slipping away. You spoke about the importance of sleep during my university years. I had insomnia, so I didn't really sleep. I didn't dream. I was very rarely, and that insomnia, eventually I'd left university, and which I'd wanted to do for a few years, but I was pleasing those who had, suggested this. And and so when I finally left university, I was in a different environment. I moved to Canada, and I slept, and I started to dream again. And it had always been my dream to move to Canada. I'd come here as a kid when I was younger. And so as I think of my teenage years, I'd been encouraged to go to university. I'd been encouraged. I had great teachers in mathematics and science that had moved me in that. So I ended up doing aerospace engineering at university. But there wasn't as many, I can remember some of the comments from my art teachers. And there was that comparison piece that you mentioned earlier. I have a brother who's today, he's just an amazing tattoo artist, and I just love his work. And we were compared, and I was compared to him, for him, I was the academic one and he was the artist. And so he had his own journey with that. And then I had my own journey. But what I noticed was that, yeah, that creative expression wasn't there as much. I played guitar, self-taught myself guitar through university, and that was my use of my hands and tapping into that creativity in some way. And there were elements of creativity when you're designing airplanes and coming up with things like that. There was elements of that. And at the same time, there was a lot of following a formula, and there was group projects, so there wasn't necessarily that free to explore on my own. And I think one of the things that came out of it more than anything was that creativity, dreaming, and imagination, there was also this sense of pressure to succeed, right? And so it's like it wasn't creativity for creativity's sake. It was creativity with an outcome, a desired outcome on it, and that kind of pressure. And one last thing, and this is going back a little bit further again about imagination, was I remember as a young boy, I used to piss my mom off. She was never, she would get upset with me because I would often sit at the top of the stairs and I wouldn't go to my room. And I would tell her because there's beings in there with me. And so she would say, it's just your imagination. And so that stuck with me for many years. It was just my imagination. And so imagination and truth became these two diverging paths. And I love in Gene Keys, actually, imagination and truth are programming partners that work together in the Gene Keys. And that was like coming into that was just, it's such yeah, bringing that all together, pooling that all together. And so I think there's such value in these questions that you're asking and encouraging us to go back to our teenage years in this way and just look at that. I mean, that's just me, and that's the shortened version of that experience for me. And I could share much more on it, but it's just so, it was recognizing that, wow, and if anybody works with gene keys, the gene key that is covers my IQ years is the 35th gene key, which moves from hunger to adventure to boundlessness. And so in the years since, it's like, how can I bring that boundlessness to the teenager that felt pretty limited and bound up in the world? And also recognizing that, wow, that hunger, there was always, at that time, it was a hunger for knowledge because I had a grandfather and a father that were both professors at university. So I had a hunger for knowledge and a hunger for success in that way. But I starved the creative side of me. I starved the artist side of me. And it would be easy to look out and say, oh, school did this to me, my parents did this to me. And that was the terrain, and that was what was coming at me from my environment, rather. And as an adult coming into forgiving, yes, forgiving others for things that they have said in time, but forgiving myself for continuing to not strengthen that. Like the times when rather than sitting and listening to or going into a visualization and allowing my imagination to wander freely, instead I would go scroll the internet or go and watch a TV show where images are blasted at me and there's very little room for me to kind of create in my own mind. I mean, I think one of the things during my teenage years that really kept me connected to that creativity, and for many others too, I'm sure, was reading of sci-fi novels and fantasy novels because, and always that encouraging of reading the book first, not because the movies were terrible, but because the movies told you what you're looking at. Right? This is what we've decided Gandalf and the hobbits look like. This is what we've decided Narnia looks like. Whereas up until that moment, it's our imagination that's guiding that. And so over the years, going to your other question when you were talking about um, how do we take care of the spirit now, our psyche, our body? And I can really feel the importance of that because I'm nurturing and nourishing that teenage part of myself in the ways that I didn't nurture and nourish myself at that time. And I'm creating the environments around me. And I've also, I'm blessed in my relationship to have a wife who seems to be able to just, her creativity is all encompassing. It's like she's painting 1 minute and she's doing piano the next minute. And she's been a great example because she treats those like appointments with herself. It's like, no, I'm not booking a client in at this time because this is my appointment with myself. And so, just that remembering that and allowing ourselves to just do it for the joy of it, the joy that the teenager may not have been encouraged. If you were encouraged to create for the sake of creativity as a teenager, that's an idea of, that's a great role model that you received there in that. And the person that didn't put that pressure upon you, to succeed at something, but just to enjoy it. And to be able to do that in my life today And I still, even as we've been talking and as even we've been sinking into this more, it's like I can recognize where I still would like to improve it, open it up more, because I have noticed where the big project that I'm writing right now, and even calling it a big project, it adds that pressure on to it versus this story that I'm writing that's starting to percolate through my experiences, but the story that I want to write that is my imagination, my creativity, and just playing with that and it becoming what might look like a book and might get printed one day, but for now is to nourish me, is that creativity nourishes me. And I think of when J.K. Rowling wrote her Harry Potter books. It was just she said, I didn't know. I thought maybe 8 people might read it, and that kind of thing, because teenage Matthew thought, well, the whole world has to read it, right? And that pressure that comes from that. And I've still been, even to this day, I caught myself recently. I was like, wow, that teenager's still, you're talking about the repressed teenagers, like that teenager's still got a little bit of a voice in there. And I was noticing where I wasn't allowing myself to enjoy that process. So this is my commitment to myself in that part of my life, because there are other parts of my life where that creativity runs free in different ways to my wife and in my own unique way. And there are ways where it's like it's continuing to unravel and improve. So I really do encourage this journey for anybody, especially, yes, if you're working in the Venus with the Venus sequence right now and you're contemplating this time of your life, it's like, those feelings of unworthiness that come from thinking that because we were good at art and we did the art, but that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to just be good at the art. The art had to be, on a show somewhere or in a gallery or something like that. And or that we were told, whatever it was, the stories that we took in. So when we're working with our IQ sphere in the Venus sequence, that can be a big part of this journey, and just remembering some of this and reconnecting with this teenage part of ourselves in a new way, in a fresh way. And so just that real encouragement to be open to recognizing where are the thoughts that I've been limiting myself? Where am I still playing the records of somebody else's opinions, somebody else's judgments of me in my mind? And the dream arc is really great for that, in my opinion. It's like I'm literally connecting with this world around me. And so often the characters that show up in my writing are animals now, because it's like they're here, they're bounding around the forest and that creativity it becomes boundless and it's a joy to create. And so if we're working with this Venus sequence, this is a great way working with the IQ and working with this theme of dreams and fantasy and imagination and recognizing that when J.R.R. Tolkien was writing The Hobbit, and creating Middle Earth, is that it seemed like it was just all imagination, and at the same time, maybe just maybe there's something in the collective consciousness that he tapped into, a memory of something that is still beginning to unravel, and that for me is the boundless appreciation of the teenage mind. So yeah, lots to, take these questions that Rosie's given us, really take them deep into our contemplation, see what gets, just see where that journey takes you. Because, like I said, it took me on one journey a few days ago when I was first looking at them. And now that I'm here with Rosie, it's like, oh, there's fresh bubbles have popped open now and are ready for reflection. So yeah, I'm sure there's more that I could share and poke at, but hopefully it gives an idea of just what a journey those teenage years have been for each of us. And though we may have felt very lost at times and very alone, that really my future self, which is now my present self, was really there with me the whole time because
Mm.
I know I'm with him now. And so, yes, take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your psyche, and take care of your spirit, like Rosie's been encouraging.
Wow,
Thanks.
Matthew. That's amazing.
I went off on one there. I
You
wasn't
did. No, I love
expecting.
it. I love it. And I think this is such a good example of how it works, right? Like it's just you went down your own little contemplative journey and opened one thing up and that opened another thing. And then because we are part of the hive mind, everything that was inspired inside of you, like triggered something in me and inspired something in
Mm.
me. I'm like, oh my God, I had that too. Or wow, it was really different for me. Or and this is
Yes.
how the DreamArc also works. And that's why it's so wonderful we have the community calls where people can get together and then bounce off of each other, be inspired by each other. And every
Mhm.
time we just kind of, I don't know, I feel like even just by putting words on the places where we didn't feel there was permission, we're already giving permission in that
Yeah.
moment. So we're
Mhm.
creating more and more space just by shining a light on it and giving ourselves permission to talk about it. So, so much food for thought, Matthew. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I could say so much, but I'm thinking that maybe time-wise we should consult the DreamArc Oracle in honor of
Yeah,
all of our
that's,
teenage brains.
yeah,
Does that sound good?
I think so. Let's do it.
Okay, so this is for our teenage brains, and it's also to help us prepare for the DreamPod call this month. And anybody who just happens to be seeing this and is involved in the Venus, this is also a part of just our offering to you from our hearts, in case it fits. So let's just all take a moment and hold our tender, tender teenage selves and all the teenagers in the world right now. Let's bring them into our embrace. And let's hold them in our heart. And we're going to do that while I'm looking for my cards, while I'm holding the mock deck of the DreamArc in my hands. And I'm going to kind of like, I'm going to, with my finger, just kind of go through them. And then Matthew, you can just tell me when you want me to stop, and then I'll pull out an animal. Okay, so here I go. I'm going very slowly.
Now, it was
Okay.
very clear. It came in very clearly now. Mhm. That's the, is
Isn't
that
that
the,
the stork?
is it the crane or the stork?
I think it's the stork. Let me check because those got switched around originally. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yes.
I had gotten them mixed up. Let's see. I'm
Yeah,
going to look right
that's why I
now.
think I might still be a little mixed in my
Yeah, you
head.
might remember. Look, I could be wrong.
I believe
Yeah, it's the stork.
it's the stork of the 53rd gene key, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? This is so great. It's a changer. It's a changer. And it's the vision of good fortune and fruition.
Hmm.
And just for those who are interested, it's part of a trio. And the mammal is the rabbit. And interestingly, the underworld creature is the snake. And
Hmm.
and
You're
what
the
are we what is the year that we're in? What was the theme of our last dream pod call, right? It was all about the snake. So we're still connected. This is the vision key connected to the serpent as the main archetype. So Matthew, do you want me to read a little bit from here?
You know, I absolutely think the stork has a very perfect message for in relation to what we've been exploring. So I think you should read the whole thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay. So I'll do the guidance. Here we go. I'll just hold this up. Okay. I am the stork, and I bring good news. Dreams that you have held long and deep in your soul are coming to fruition. You must prepare yourself for a new cycle. I am a changer, and change is coming. There is, however, some work still to do inside. It's as though a royal and most revered guest is coming to your house, and you must clean everything. What patterns keep you in the old ways? What is the state of your physical body? Wow, this is interesting. Is it
Hmm.
healthy and vibrant? What of your emotional life? As my darker manifestation, I'm sometimes seen as the undertaker bird because of my prevalence for eating corpses. What corpses remain inside you? Allow me to eat them. Transform them with awareness, with ritual, with prayer and deep contemplation. For the new to enter into you, you must be renewed. Go now, therefore, into a cycle of renewal. Leave no stone in your psyche unturned. Now is your time. Take care of your effects, your finances, your will, even. Prepare yourself as though death were coming. When you're ready, all you need to do is wait for the new cycle. It will come at its own time. Grace will deliver it to your door. One day there will come a gentle knock, and there will I be. Prepare yourself, therefore, and wait in peace. Do not wait in anxiety or impatience. Wait as though you have all eternity before you, and so you do.
Love it. That's
Whew.
such a powerful message. And if I can reflect just on it briefly in
Yeah,
relation to what
please.
we've been talking about here today, yeah, this the fruition of the dreams. And I remember going along to see it was a talk by a gentleman who was talking about, the choosing of our life path career. And he was a psychotherapist actually, and I went along to it, and he brings in Joseph Campbell. I'm like, okay, I'm in a good spot here. I like this guy. He's bringing in Joseph Campbell, and then he brought in Monty Python, and then I knew I was in the right place. It was like my two influences there. But he would talk about the dreams that we had as children, and the dreams, especially like he said the dreams of what we wanted to become before the age of 10 was something that would play out. I think he said it was in our 20s and our 20s and our 30s. And that the dreams that we had in our teenage years, that's what we would be moving towards. That's what would speak to us in that later life. And so, I'd always wanted to be an author in my teenage years, right? I'd always wanted to write books because I loved books. I loved reading books. I'm from a family of authors. And, my sister, she was what, 7 years old and writing letters to my grandparents, which we discovered after they died. And in it, she was 7 years old, and she was talking about, and we just got a new house, and Matthew's room is green, and Luke's room is blue. And then what do you think she became in her 20s? She became an interior decorator and painter.
Wow.
And so I was like, hey, there's something to this. And so, we're talking at about a time, the gift of the 53rd gene key and the gift of the rabbit is about expansion. And I think of this is a time of real expansion. And it's a time of, yeah, what were the dreams that we had? And maybe we didn't give ourselves permission to dream. A lot of the things that I've unlocked in my adult life were dreams that I had pushed away in my teenage years. And so you might be giving yourself that permission, like Rosie said, to dream again. So I feel like this stork is a very, a beautiful reminder. And that's speaking to the corpses inside of us, right? That was pretty potent messaging.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm thinking too, like if there's just one question we can send people home with along with all the other ones, but it's really what you're saying, like what was a deep, deep dream you remember having as a kid? Or
Yeah.
maybe as a teenager, maybe there are two different ones. Or if you did have a dream back then, but you weren't allowed to dream, what might it have been?
What might that have
What
dream?
might it have been?
I know when it was under 5, I wanted to be Superman. That one still hasn't happened yet, but
Well, maybe there will be several dreams. Like maybe there's like
yeah.
up until 7 and then 7 to 14 and then 14 to 21. We could play with that. Um,
Yeah.
but then again, like if you can't think of anything, if you weren't allowed, like if you there was a dream, what might it have been? I think that's a really fun way to engage the imagination and digging underneath those stones that were blocked and put on top of us. So,
And you could even talk to you could imagine your teenage self and sitting
mhm,
down for a cup of tea with them and just say, what dreams do you have? I'm going to listen to you.
yeah.
I haven't for many years. I'm going to listen to you, and I know nobody else listened to you at that time necessarily. So what is that? What is that dream? I think that's a really good question to
You know
leave
what's so
with.
funny, Matthew? I'm just remembering, one of my favorite shows is Northern Exposure. And I'm
Yeah.
remembering this one episode where Maggie, the character is this super self-reliant, independent young woman who's kind of afraid of depending on men and all that kind of stuff.
She's
But
a
anyway,
pilot too,
she's a
isn't she?
pilot. She's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
she's a mechanic. She's just, doesn't want to depend on anybody else. And she discovers, or she finds, a letter that she had written to her older self as a teenager. So when she was a teenager, she wrote a letter to herself when she would be 35, and she discovered this letter and she reads it, and she goes through this whole process because her younger self wanted her to be beautiful and married and have children and have like followed all of those very mainstream conditioning dreams, I guess, that that her as a younger child had been kind of bombarded with. And then she went through this whole crisis because her life wasn't at all like her teenage self was. And there's this whole thing where she's kind of like, the teenage self is there as a ghost and they're constantly interacting with each other. And the teenage self is so disapproving of what her life has become. And she goes through this whole process of like coming to terms with the life that she has and actually coming to appreciate it as well. So I also want to like open up to that it's possible you are living out the dream, like an even better dream than what your teenage self could have imagined. So just let that be a part of the process as well. Yeah,
Absolutely.
northern exposure.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I never used to watch that as a
Oh,
teenager.
yes,
So,
that's my favorite
yeah.
show. Love it so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beth, did you want to just share anything about the DreamPod call that's coming up that you think would be helpful for people to know?
Yeah, just, really take this in. If you've made it this far and you've been hearing what we've been sharing, really, trusting that it might be speaking to something inside of your own experiences and just taking some of these questions and maybe it's some of those earlier questions and we can make sure they're visible on this page where the video is as well.
Oh,
And so that you can see those questions and you can take them into your life and give them time to percolate and so when we do the live call together, we will allow time for breakout rooms. And the whole point was that there was less of us talking at that time and more of you in the room getting to experience and share, just like Rosie and I have done in the last 20, 30 minutes here, and giving you time to really dive deep into that. And so we'll have those breakout rooms. And if there's anybody here that's watching and you're like, I'm so brand new to this DreamArc and I'm not sure how to navigate it, and I'm not sure I'm on the same page as everybody else. None of us are on the same page. We're all on different pages when it comes to the DreamArc, but we will have space there for those of you who are new to the DreamArc to come and join me in a breakout room to be able to explore the foundations and ask any questions that you have. So there'll be that opportunity. Or if you're feeling brave and you're like, I'll just trust the journey, you can jump in and join some of the people and you'll find that in these breakout rooms, we have people that have been doing this for the 3 years that the DreamArc has almost been out for, and there are some who are brand new to it. But it's the moment, it's the relationships, it's the connecting, and trusting in the synchronicity that perhaps you'll end up in a space where the contemplations from other people either reflect or trigger something in your own journey that could serve you. So that's the beauty of these spaces. So I think that's what I'd like to share for those. And so we'll be we'll look forward to that call with everybody.
and this is also a theme we haven't talked about in those 3 years, right? So, like, if you're hopping in and this is your first time, how cool is that? That your first theme is
Yeah,
the teenage mind and fantasy, and it's going to be new for everybody. And then
yeah,
one more thing I just want to encourage you to do, because some people might actually, like, if they don't necessarily want to be in breakthrough rooms, some people just want the content, right? They don't want to go into the dream pod call. So let's say you get this content. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with people that you feel close to, that you trust. See what comes up between you as well. There's so many ways to explore this material, and we just want to catalyze something to awaken inside of you and to just make a little more room for that little teenager in there. Okay?
absolutely. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. I think the one last thing I'd like to just
Yeah.
mention briefly is that we
Oh,
will be releasing the new upcoming Gazelle newsletter is going to be focused on the warriors of the DreamArc.
yes.
And so you can keep your eyes out in your inboxes for that in the very near future as well. Actually, it might already be out by the time you watch this video. Who
Right.
knows? It depends when you get to
Due
watching it.
process.
So we just want to leave you with kind of a parting message from the sage of the dream arc, Richard Rudd. And so if you stick around, we're going to be saying goodbye. But after we've said goodbye, you'll see his familiar face pop up on the screen. And there's just a short little message from him on dreaming for you here today. So enjoy that message. Thank you, Rosie. This has
Thank you,
been very
Matthew.
fruitful. I hope everybody else finds it that way. Might have stirred up some deep stuff. Who knows what'll happen? But trust in the process. It's very enlightening. And for those of you doing the Venus sequence, I trust that this is supporting that journey for you in some way, somehow. And until the live call, we'll see you then. Thank you, Rosie. And now I think we can hand it over to Richard. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
This is my final dream I'm going to share with you. It's the final slide. And, you know, I dream my daughter is a really keen footballer. And she's part of this team, really good football team. And I'm a football parent, so I go along to the matches. And, you know, there's a lot of matches. And there's this one team that they play. And they play all these different teams. There's this one team who are just way, way better than anyone else. They're like, they shouldn't be, you know, there's been complaints, you know, sometimes they beat other teams like 20-0 or something. And it's just a bit demoralizing because they're just on a different level and they ought to be in another kind of, you know, whole division. And so no one's ever beaten them, right? No one in the league has ever beaten this team or even drawn with them or anything because you can't get close to them because they're just so they're just on another plane. And anyway, I had this dream that, you know, because we were coming up to play them, my daughter, and, you know, I had this dream that we were playing them and I was in the team. Actually, I was one of the kind of girls in the team, and we beat them in this dream. And it was extraordinary because, you know, whenever, you know, when I have to drive the kind of some of the girls around and take them to the football matches and stuff. And they all kind of go, oh yeah, we're never going to win. Anyway, so I had this really powerful dream and it was really specific on how to beat them. It had strategies in it. It's like, so, and I thought, I woke up and it was powerful and I reached out and sent an email to the coach of the team. And I just said, I've had, you know, and this sounds weird and you don't know anything about me, but and I thought I'd take the opportunity to tell him this is what I do for a living. I do sort of transformational work, by the way. He doesn't know anything about me. And I said, look, I had this dream, and in the dream, you know, our team won against this other team. And I think it's about belief. You know, I think it's about, because I said the girls don't believe that they can beat them. No one believes that they can beat them because no one's ever beaten them. Anyway, so I kind of shared this and some more insights and even a bit of the strategy of how to beat them. And then I left it and he said, oh, thanks. That sounds amazing. And I said, look, anytime you want to talk to me, I'm really happy also to kind of give you, you know, if you need my skills, I'm very happy to do it for free for you and help you with whatever you want, coaching and stuff. And he meant to ring me, but he didn't. But then we came to the weekend and he'd obviously been thinking about it. And going to it, and he gave them an amazing pep talk, and obviously I didn't hear it, but they fought in a way that you've never seen them fight before, and the score was a draw. You know, it was like no one could believe it. Like it's normally 12-0, and suddenly it was 0-0. No one scored a goal. They did not let them score a goal, and we didn't score a goal either. But that, you know. So it was like it was a huge. All the parents, when the final whistle went, were like, "You've never heard a 0-0 being such a like victory." It was like we couldn't believe it. But that dream that I had was so strong. I communicated it to him, and then he put that dream into the team. You know, he put that that belief into the team of those girls. And all they needed was that kind of power from him to sort of stay and believe in them. I don't think he had fully believed in that they could win either. Or maybe he had, but he'd not told them. And so it was like a really beautiful thing. It happened as I was putting the slideshow together as well. And it just shows, in a way, how dreams can be acted on and how they can create little miracles or big miracles, because this is about sacred activism. The DreamArc ultimately is a presage to a new human that's coming into the world, a quantum human, a collective human, that dreams together of a new world and then acts on it. And so we have to act on our dreams. We have to have the courage to act on them. So think about that. If we can dream it, we can do it.